about John Robinson and the job that he did. And it's kind of difficult to judge because he gets fired for not meeting the level that he created.
Welcome into the Hot Read Podcast for Wednesday, March the 15th. Welcome to the Ides of March. Beware Caesar, also known as the end of the 2022 NFL League year and the beginning of the 2023 NFL League year. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, Director of Published Content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network, and I am joined on, we're recording this the day before the Ides of March, which is another very important holiday, Pi Day, here in the U.S. JT, how are you? Have you indulged in any pie today?
No,
me neither,
I have
but
not.
I wish I had. I would like some pie.
I didn't even know that it was Pie Day until you brought it up with our special guest who we have later on the show. But you said that, and I was like, oh yeah, it is Pie Day.
I didn't realize it until I said it in that interview, and I only said it because I looked at the calendar and saw 3/14 and was like, oh wait, today is Pie Day. How about that? I guess when you're not in school anymore, when they feed you pie and teach you about Pie Day in math class, it's not nearly as important. But maybe we should make it a bigger deal. I think there should be free pies involved. I want a pie now that I know it's Pie Day. But we're going to talk about things that aren't pie. We're going to talk about the NFL. It is feels like 10 seconds removed from our show on Monday. We are moving hot and heavy out here in the NFL. I mean, I don't even know. I'm at a loss for words because it feels like it's been 10 seconds. And also we have 17 things that have happened that are worth talking about that we're going to get into today. So I guess I won't delay. We'll just dive right in if that's all right with you, JT.
Good with me.
Good with you. All right, let's do it. We've got the warm-up here before we get into the real meat of the free agent shake-up, roundup, whatever you want to call it. We're going to go around the league, start with the Titans, and then we'll cover all of those topics in a new segment that we've got later on in the show. But first, let's enter the warm-up. I've got 3 thoughts to share with you once again today, and the first of which is this. I debated whether or not I would even bring this up on the show, but I am choosing to do so because I'm petty. And while it's a dumb thing that no one will remember 10 days from now, it is still worth pointing out because there is a lesson to be learned here. Please, for the love of God, stop listening to, and you know what? No, stop giving these lying internet bozos the attention that they're begging you to give them. And the example, and you could say, what is this pertaining to, Easton? It's the internet. This happens every day. Yes, fair. Today's example is a Twitter account by the handle of @mid10takes, an account that I had never heard of. No one else, I guess, had ever heard of it. I don't know how it rose to prominence today, but it got people's attention because this account that was created, I think, like a month or two ago and had something like 60 followers. He or she tweeted out, a friend of mine who works inside the league is telling me the Titans are in the works of making a blockbuster trade, in all caps, with the team he works for. He says it will go down as the biggest trade in Titans history. Follow that up saying also the Tennessee Titans have been quiet for a reason. They're trying to get this deal done because it will affect the cap majorly. So they have to see what plays out with this before they sign free agents. My understanding is that the Titans are on a 48-hour deadline. Ominous, spooky, very, very vague, intentionally so. Really good attention-grabbing material here, except for the fact that it was all made up. And we know that it was all made up because this guy, the huge Titans trade guy, mid10takes, after he had spent basically the entire morning making every very gullible person involved in Titans Twitter, or maybe people that aren't quite so gullible but are just desperately hoping, trying to manifest some big move because they want to be entertained and they want this team to make big splash moves. They bought it. They circulated it. He rose to prominence, got his quite literally 15 minutes of fame. And now, I think just like 3 or 4 hours after he tweeted those things, the account doesn't exist anymore. Poof, like that, gone in the wind. So what's the lesson we learned here, boys and girls? We don't listen to people on the internet who we don't No, we don't listen to people that have 60 followers. We don't listen to people that have a very generic location or brand name as their mid 10 takes. And we don't listen to people that have pictures as their bio that aren't real people. It's very simple. It is. I know that there are blue check marks out there for more than just the folks you think you can trust. I have a blue check mark that I wasn't given by Twitter. I have it because I'm subscribed to Twitter Blue. I was subscribed to Twitter Blue well before the checkmark thing was a thing. I need it to be able to post videos long enough to, get the full context of the interviews that I'm doing or whatever it may be. So I've got one, but there are a lot of folks out there that have them that are just, average Joes on the internet. I don't personally have an issue with that. I don't really care about the whole checkmark thing. I think it's pretty easy if you have a couple of brain cells to rub around in your head to click on the person's name. If you think that if it's somebody reporting something, a good rule of thumb, maybe JT, that you've not heard of, maybe when you read that report, you click on their name and do 10 seconds of research into, okay, who is this person? How many followers do they have? Do they, work for a website that I've heard of? Do they work for a show that I've heard of? Do they, are they followed by other people that I trust? It's very, very easy to do your very basic research on this. And if folks had done that with mid 10 takes this morning, every single red flag that there is to throw up would have been thrown up. So please, can we stop giving these people the attention they desire? Please and thank you. The second thing that I want to talk about in the warm-up is this. I want to elaborate a little bit on yesterday when I talked about how I think the Andre Dilliard signing by the Titans changes the math for them at the 11th overall pick in the first round. I mentioned that, and then I had some follow-up thoughts after we recorded that I wanted to get out there. So, for example, I was asked on Twitter by somebody, I forget who, if I thought a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba, the wide receiver out of Ohio State, might be appealing to the Titans at 11 now that they don't necessarily need to go tackle there. And my response to them was essentially that, yeah, JSN is my wide receiver 1 in this draft by a significant margin. We've already talked about that, but I really struggled justifying the 11th overall pick on him or any wide receiver in this draft. But at 11, if they were to make that pick, ultimately I would respect it. They better be right. You can't miss on a wide receiver in this draft class at 11. If you go after your guy there, fine, shoot your shot. You better be right about him. I do, however, think that there are, and this is the thing that I wanted to elaborate on mostly because I mentioned this yesterday. JT, you and I agree. There are more than 10 guys in this draft that are blue chip, top of their position group, worthy of a top 10 overall pick, the kind of quote unquote can't miss guys that you would be willing to spend a top 10 pick on, right? These blue chippers, based on our research so far, we've got more than 10 that I think are worthy of going in the top 10. And so that means that at least one of those top 10 worthy players is going to be available at 11 for the Titans to take. And so I thought, well, it seems like there are more than 10, Easton, but let's write this down. Let's see who is actually there. I came up with 12. So I actually think there are 12 guys that are worthy of a first over or a top 10 pick, or at least will go. I'll call this the list of guys that are worthy of a top 10 pick plus Will Levis, because that's essentially what the list is. So my list of guys that I think could be there at 11, these 12 guys will go in the top 12, I believe. The question is what order. In the quarterback department, I've got Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis. Those top 4 guys, they're all very generally described as guys that are going to go in the top 5 or top 10. I think it's reasonable to assume they'll all be gone by then. Maybe Will Levis is still hanging around at 11, but I don't think that he will be. Then the offensive linemen, Paris Johnson Jr., Peter Skoronski. Those are the 2 guys people expect to go at the top. Jalen Carter, Will Anderson Jr., and Tyree Wilson are your edge rushers. And then cornerbacks, Joey Porter Jr., Christian Gonzalez, and Devin Witherspoon. So that's 12 prospects that I count worthy of that blue chip designation, meaning 2 of those guys, at least, could be more, are guaranteed to be available at 11. And I think that is valuable, whether the Titans choose to stick and pick or maybe they trade back. The fact that trading back is a real possibility for them because people don't realize, we'll just trade back. This is the draft. It's a bad draft. Trade back, right? Yeah, cool on paper. But guess what? To trade, you have to get one of the other 31 teams to trade with you. And if it's a good draft to not be where you are, how many teams do you think are out there wanting to be where you are? Makes it difficult on teams sometimes that want to trade back because nobody wants their spot for a reason. The same reason they don't want their spot. I don't think that's the case with the Titans here. And because they no longer have to take a tackle necessarily at the top of the draft, even though I think that they probably still should, it makes it interesting because there is guaranteed to be a guy or 2 or 3 there at 11 that, if not valuable to them, will absolutely be valuable to somebody else that may be willing to trade up with them and allow the Titans to trade back. So I find that fascinating. And I think that that's worth bearing in mind as a very real possibility for the Titans this year. Trading back is firmly on the table. The third and final thought here, JT, and this was spurred by a conversation we had on the live show on Monday, talking with some folks in the comments. This was actually a conversation that I had on that live stream, and then after the live stream with my old friend from high school, Austin Blazik, who asked a question and then followed it up with a DM to me talking about Jeffrey Simmons. And it was, I think, a good representation of the zeitgeist within Titans fans, just a little bit concerned about the idea of spending $25, $26, $27 million on a defensive tackle in Jeffrey Simmons. And so his question to me was essentially, it boiled down to, is that something you can do from a team building standpoint on paper? Can you spend $26 million on a defensive tackle and put together a good defense? Is that a proper allocation of money? And my response was this, that I think, first of all, I'm personally not convinced. He prefaced the question by saying, is it wise to do this, especially in a rebuild, which is a fair question to ask. The situation definitely bears pointing out. But I'm not personally convinced still that this team is going into a full rebuild. Okay, basically the first thing out of Amy Adams Strunk's mouth back at Rand Carthen's introductory press conference that I was at about a month ago was that a big part of the reason why Rand Carthen was given the job was because the blueprint for this team that he laid out in his interviews with Amy Adams Strunk, the Titans ownership group, Mike Vrabel, the plan that he had if he were to get the job always involved not having to tear it down to the studs, not having to blow it up. He believed, as Amy Adams Strunk says she does, and as it seems Mike Vrabel also believes, this team doesn't need to be completely scrapped for a full rebuild, that there can be a retool that goes on here and they can find success. So I think that this is just them so far, the transactions the Titans have made. I think it's really them just tearing out what they consider to be the old and the bad and the injured, and Rand Carthen's going to do his best to fill those holes back in over the coming weeks. You can't replace these guys if you don't first trade them or let them walk or cut them off the roster, right? And I think today's actions, for example, a couple of the free agency moves the Titans have made at the linebacker position are a perfect example of Rand Carthen is making holes on his roster that he intends on swiftly plugging right back up. In terms of how comfortable I am paying Jeffrey Simmons that amount of money, on paper, yes, it's a terrifying amount, without a doubt. But I am firmly convinced that he is one of those rare players that you simply have to pay that much for. Okay, there isn't a single element of his game that gives you any pause. There really isn't. Those elements were his true pass rush ability and his durability coming into last season. And he passed both of those tests with flying colors. He played hurt on that ankle for the majority of the back half of the season, as well as, so the durability question, there wasn't really a ton of durability issues with him, but that was something that was crossed off the list. And then his pure pass rush ability, he was the number one pass rusher for the Titans for most of the season. He was the guy that made the engine go. He was the glue that made the pass rush stick. Him and Danico Autry were the straw that stirred the drink. And so with those two concerns out of the way, there just isn't anything about Jeffrey Simmons on or off the field that gives you pause. And that's really rare. Those elements that he proved not a concern, in addition to, and this is important, I mean, I've talked to Mike Vrabel enough to know that he adores Jeffrey Simmons. And Jeffrey Simmons, who I've talked to enough to know, he adores Mike Vrabel right back. I mean, he practically repeats the company lines that Mike Vrabel is doling out when we talk to him after games, the media availability in the locker room. I mean, it's a lot of the exact same thing. He is on board 110%. He is bought into Vrabel's culture. I think he's the perfect player. I think he's the perfect teammate. He's the perfect locker room guy. And all of those things make him exactly the kind of guy that you pay to make your cornerstone player or one of your cornerstone players through a retool or a rebuild. I think his salary, I know his salary is locked in stone next season, but I think people aren't realizing that not only will no deal he strikes this offseason impact that number next year that the Titans are paying him. Again, he's that 5th year option is picked up. They are paying him what they are currently scheduled to pay him. But if anything, a new deal could make this year's cap hit for him go down a little bit because they are then able to push some of that cap hit this season into the future if they so wish. So I think that his contract could include some void years. You could see a backloaded contract, some things on the tail end where they're finagling with the cap and making a little bit of funny money room to make his long-term contract workable for a Titans team that needs money in the future and needs to be able to build up this team around him. The last thing I'll say is this. My number one litmus test on things like this is consider what other good teams would do if your team chose not to pull the trigger. Now, the operative word in this sentence is good because there are a lot of mediocre, bad, dysfunctional franchises out there that do things that are bad, dysfunctional. So while you may see a team, if the Titans were to not come to terms with Jeffrey Simmons, like, I don't know, the Bears, the Jets, or the Texans, a team that has in recent history been dysfunctional and bad. You may see a team like that offer him $30 million average per year. That's not a good thing. That would be an overpay. But I do think you would see if they weren't to sign that guy, even if ultimately Simmons signed for $30 million a year to go play in Chicago or something, there would have been teams, good teams, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Niners, these teams that people respect that are well run, the Steelers, the Ravens, like they would have been interested in Jeffrey Simmons at 25 to 27 million APY. You absolutely know that they would be. So for me, that's all you need to know. Swallow hard and pay the man because he's worth it. And with that, let's get into our free agency roundup for today, March the 15th. It's a Wednesday, and JT, we've had a number of things come down the wire here since we last spoke. A couple of Titan-specific things that we'll get into, and then we'll go around the league in a segment that I have tentatively titled the what did I title it? This is great. Sum it up. Sum it up is what I'm calling it.
Yeah.
It's an effort, a cute, fun game way of efforting Easton to not speak and ramble about things to make an hour and a half long episode. So we're killing two birds with one stone. New segment. Also, new tool to get Easton to shut up early. I think it's a win-win, benefits everybody. But first, we've got a couple of Titan-specific topics to get into. JT, what is the first of those topics?
It's going to be the David Long Jr. aftermath. So he, of course, signed with the Dolphins on a pretty team-friendly deal from the looks of it. Most people on Titans Twitter yesterday said it makes sense from a standpoint of the Titans, being he's been injury riddled, and that's probably why they did not pursue him. Well, David Long decided to join the conversation by tweeting earlier this morning, "You would have thought I tore my ACL the way they treating me. Wild." Easton, what are your thoughts on him tweeting out that and just kind of his end to his Titans career?
Yeah, not a ton to say here, but I would be remiss if I didn't react to this tweet. It sounds like there was a bit of a rift here between David Long and his coaches at the very least. He seems to think that missing 12 games in 2 years is just no big deal. At least that's the vibe that this is giving off. He also seems to think that ACL injuries and soft tissue injuries are comparable. Whereas I think that the Titans are probably looking, as they're trying to improve their health culture, they're probably looking at a guy like him and saying, "Whoa, hey, hang on. Okay, an ACL injury is the kind of thing that is fluky. It's really unavoidable. I mean, your ligaments, you can strengthen your joints and ligaments to the best of your abilities. But all of these guys in the NFL, they're elite athletes. They've been working out to the point where their ligaments and joints are as strong as they can get. So when they tear an ACL, it's almost always a result of just a fluky step or, just getting tackled in a way that leads to tearing a ligament, tearing an ACL. Like that just happens sometimes. There's no avoiding that. What is more avoidable is soft tissue injuries, like a hamstring that is continually pulled on and off for 2 straight years. And that's what David Long had been dealing with. And that's what had really pushed Mike Vrabel to the edge of guys like David Long, who he mentioned by name in that press conference late last year as a repeat offender. A guy like David Long, a guy like Christian Fulton on this team that just can't stay healthy with the soft tissue injuries that, yes, allow you to rehab for a week or 2 or a month and come back in the same season. But you can't keep doing it over and over. You can't be a repeat offender in that way. So I think that is not the best look for David Long. I think that there's clearly a misunderstanding, or at the very least, 2 teams that are at 2 sides of the Titans and David Long's camp that just didn't see eye to eye on his durability issues. And that's all I have to say on David Long Jr. Let's move on.
Yeah, moving on. As I look down our rundown here, it really was the day of Titans linebacking personnel shift up today. It's really all that went down. But we had another guy on the Titans here who has left for greener pastures, I guess you could say. DeMarcus Walker is signing with the Bears as their big spending day continues. This broke just after our show last night, so talk about timing. They agreed with the former Titans defensive end DeMarcus Walker for, I think it was $7 million over the next 2 years, so a pretty decent pay raise for him as a guy who was a rotational guy here in Tennessee.
Yeah, so DeMarcus Walker is a guy that we'd talked about as somebody the Titans were probably going to look to give an extension, a deal, rewarding him for his breakout season last year. We had our colleague Justin Mello interview him, an interview that went live on BroadwaySportsMedia.com just last week. He seemingly was expressing desire to get a deal done soon, and the vibe that I got was that he wanted to return to the Titans. That didn't end up happening, but I wasn't surprised by this any longer when I saw the number involved. Walker's getting this, I think it's a 3-year deal, 21 million, 7 million APY, or it's a 2-year deal rather, I suppose, is what I have written down here. So maybe it's 2 years, but it's 7 million per year. That's more money than I think he's worth. While the Titans are losing a really promising depth player that was poised to make the leap this year as I think a really nice, not a starter per se, but a really nice rotational guy, get a lot of sacks, get really involved in the pass rush. I'm not surprised they didn't sign him to this number because Tennessee has had such great success in recent years identifying these cheap rotational pass rushers. And I'd imagine that was probably the thinking behind letting Walker get away. But one thing's for sure now, okay, pass rush is yet another need that's added to Ran Carthon's shopping list. I was asked about this yesterday. Is this a huge loss? And I found it an interesting question because really the answer is not yes, but not no. While I think it's not a huge loss, but it's a significant one, if that makes sense. So Walker was poised to be this serious rotational element of the pass rush this year. But if they just keep up this trend that they've had going of finding plus players for cheap in free agency, as well as late draft picks and UDFAs, and this is this, while John Robinson's not here anymore, it is the same scouting staff that he was working with in the building right now with Ran Carthon. So like those guys know how to find these value players. In the grand scheme of the defense, I just don't think his absence changes their ceiling at all, in my opinion. I think it just leaves a depth hole that they're going to need to fill. And so I actually, I have good reason to believe that he actively wanted to stay. I'm guessing the Bears sent him this offer and the Titans refused or felt that they simply could not match it. And so he's now headed to the Chicago Bears.
Let's move on here with David Long leaving. It kind of left a hole in the linebacking core, but the Titans have covered that up pretty quickly today, signing 2 guys. First of all, Luke Gifford. He's a former Cowboys linebacker, and the Titans signed him to a 2-year, $4 million deal. looking at his cap hits here in 2023 this year, he'll be making 1.175 million. And then in 2024, it goes up to 2.25 million. However, he can be cut after this year for 250,000 in dead money. So kind of a two-way kind of contract there. Really,
Yep.
if his play continues, he's going to get a little bit of a pay raise, but if he doesn't work out here in Tennessee, really no harm, no foul for the Titans.
Yep. So they got on their horse this morning. The Titans and Ran Carthon did, filling in this gap in the linebacking room with a guy like Luke Gifford, who, he's really more of a special teams linebacker. So, that's something to keep in mind. He's going to be a rotational guy at best. He's not going to be a starter, but it does appear that he's a good player and he's a good special teamer. This was, I think, pointed out by our guy Mike Herndon on Twitter, that in 2022, out of 205 qualifying special teamers, Luke Gifford received the 4th highest special teams grade. So good at what he does. I'm not sure how big an impact he will be. He's yet another special teams guy added to the list of splash special teams hires for the Titans special teams coach Craig Aukerman to inevitably underperform with, but we'll see if that trend ever bucks. I will say it does bring up, and this is something that definitely was brought up by Mike Herndon, I'm positive. It does bring up a point that Mike Herndon made. Is Ran Carthon an RAS guy? We've been talking about RAS a lot, and based on his first couple signings for the Titans and Andre Dilliard and Luke Gifford, it appears he may be one of those guys. Now, Carthon, so far, it seems, is interested in placing his bets on good athletes that don't have or haven't had so far a ton of opportunity to play. And so that's, I think, a good frugal way of approaching team building, especially when you have as many holes as the Titans do. But with Dilliard, he had a 9.81 RAS, Luke Gifford a 9.39, both very good athletes. And then our guy Sam Phelan, also a friend of the show, pointed out that the two players the Titans have let go so far, or at least yesterday, Nate Davis and David Long Jr., both of those guys had pretty poor RAS scores, in a 3.31 for David Long Jr. and a 6.17 for Nate Davis. So I think that could be a thing, something to keep an eye on for sure. Maybe that's an element of the scouting process that Ran Carthon really holds in high esteem. Maybe the pure athleticism of a guy is one of the number one things for Ran Carthon. We don't know that, but this next guy that we're going to talk about, he does bring this trend into question.
And this guy is the bigger of the two linebacker signings today.
Yes.
Kind of already swiftly filling that David Long Jr. hole that was left. The Titans are bringing in former San Francisco 49er linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair. We don't know his numbers yet specifically, but we'll probably learn those pretty soon. But he comes in as a guy who looks to make an impact on day one.
Yep. So they, like you said, they've filled the David Long Jr. shoes now. He does break the RAS guy theory mold, but he is the first Carthon signing of a guy that he has ties to, and I think that we'll probably see more of those. Al-Shaair, I believe he had an injury when he was coming out, so we didn't get a full RAS score on him. We did get his height, weight, bench, hand size, arm length measurables like that. He graded out pretty poor, a smaller linebacker, but smaller in kind of the same mold of David Long Jr., while his measurement numbers are lower percentile. I mean, of height, weight, wingspan, arm length, hand size, and bench press, only his arm length is above the 50th percentile, and it's 52 percentile, 32 3/8 inches. So he's a smaller guy, but we don't have his testing numbers, which I believe would have absolutely made him a more savory athlete option. He played 3 months with a torn UCL in his elbow during his junior year at Florida Atlantic. That's the one tidbit that I gathered in seeing the reporting on him today. I forget who that was from, but tough guy, clearly a Vrabel kind of guy. You look at his PFF grades, granted a smaller sample size because he was playing behind some really, really talented linebackers in San Francisco, just like Andre Dilliard. It does not mean that he was bad at his job, just means he wasn't as good as these Pro Bowl, all-pro guys. His PFF grades from last year, a 67.8 overall, nearly 80 in the run defense, 83 in pass rush, and his coverage grade is a hair lower. So as is the status quo for the Titans at the linebacker position, recently. They're going to be very, very good pass rushers, very good run blockers, but they've lost a guy who was their coverage guy in David Long Jr. I don't know if you can really bank on Azeez Al-Shaair being your coverage guy in the interior. I don't know if they're going to be able to bank on him or if they need to look elsewhere. Maybe Monty Rice can fill that hole a little bit more, take over a starting role in that way. I will say, I think that Monty Rice and Al-Shaair are a pretty solid linebacker duo. I saw that our guy, we got so many friends of the show at this point. Our guy, James Foster, was talking about this. I believe he put a video out on this. If he did, definitely go check it out because everything he does is really fantastic. He was pointing out how the Titans really, at this point, JT, it feels like they've created a lot of holes, but on defense, they really just need a pass rusher and a, day 2 or 3 cornerback in this draft. And they're going to be pretty set, I think, on the defensive side of the ball. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if the free agency offseason attention from the Titans front office turns towards the offensive side of the ball in a big way here shortly.
Yeah, and that's going to wrap it up here for our Titans specific free agents.
Well, you say that. And yet, while we're recording here, we've had one thing come down the pipe. We've got some breaking news to report on. It was reported by Jordan Schultz just a moment ago that the Titans are signing former 49ers starter and versatile offensive guard / center Daniel Brunskill, according to a source with The Score. I like this signing a lot. Obviously, we got to know the numbers. This just came down. I'm giving my live reaction right now, but based on just looking them up real quick, 4 years in the league so far, came out as a tackle, was moved to guard. He started every game for the 49ers in 2020 and 2021 at guard, and then a little bit of center. 6'5", 300 pounds. He's also, like I said, he's played some tackle, but really an interior guy. The initial reaction, it seems, from the San Francisco crowd is that this is a bummer, that they wanted to hang on to him, was viewed as a super versatile veteran guy on that offensive line. So it seems like a really awesome veteran signing for the Titans. He has played 61 total games in his career, 42 starts. And these stats courtesy of our guy Sam Phelan, who just tweeted this out. Daniel Brunskill in 2022, the last time we saw him start a full year, and now it's loading. Here we go. 518 snaps played, 0 penalties, 0 sacks allowed. Not too shabby for a guy that is going to potentially be a starter for the Titans. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he plugs in at one of their guard positions. And now, I mean, best case scenario, the Titans now have a starting right tackle, guard on one of the two sides. I still think that they're seeing Aaron Brewer as their starting center, and they probably see Andre Dilliard as a guy that's going to at least compete to be either the starting left tackle or left guard. So if these 4 guys are their guys, they may just need one more starting offensive lineman. It could be a tackle, could be a guard. We don't know. I think it bolsters this room in a big way. Looking at his PFF grades here, the Titans are absolutely bucking a little bit of a trend that they've had with the skill level of their offensive linemen. That this is the second consecutive guy that Ran Carthon has signed. By the way, yet another Ran Carthon guy here, connection with San Francisco. I'm sure Ran Carthon knows just how versatile and valuable a player he is. But the Titans, for a couple of years in a row now, have been the team looking for offensive linemen that can run block till the cows come home, but they are mediocre pass blockers at best, right? Well, with Andre Dilliard and now with Daniel Brunskill, Brunskill's overall PFF grade in 2022 was a 69. He had a 76.9 pass blocking grade, which is fantastic, and just a 61.5 run blocking grade, which, while not great, not his strong suit, obviously, still passable. So this team may be a much better pass blocking team going forward. That's at least the goal, I'd imagine, for a team that was dead last or in the bottom 5 at best the past 2 years as a pass blocking unit. Wouldn't be shocked at all if they just continue to target these guys that can pass block real well. And maybe they think we're such a good running team, we'll just teach these guys how to run block. I think that we can teach these guys how to do that. Maybe that's the philosophy. I think that it is certainly a clue that we've been given here. 2 consecutive guys, once as a coincidence, twice as a pattern. the Titans are looking for some better pass blocking.
Yeah, and if you look at his positional stats here on his 518 stats last year, he played both, a majority of it both at guard. So he has the most of it at 354 snaps here at right guard, played 108 at left guard, and then 20 at the center, and then a little bit at right tackle. But the point is here, if you're looking at their line right now, it seems like the right side of their line is most likely set in Nicholas Petit-Frere and now Daniel Brunskill. If you have Aaron Brewer as your center, that means looking at 11, if you really can't,
you just
go
got the
wrong.
Left side of the line to set up here, right?
And it's whatever you want to go with. If Paris Johnson's there and you like him, boom, you have Paris Johnson. You move Dilliard into the guard position. There's your line. If you like Skoronski, you have those two battle it out.
That's what I was
going
to. That's what I was going to say, JT. If the Titans ended up going into the training camp preseason phase of the year, and their offensive line starters looked like from right to left going backwards, Nicholas Petit-Frere at right tackle, Daniel Brunskill at right guard, Aaron Brewer at center, and then at the left guard and left tackle positions, you had Peter Skoronski, rookie, number 1 offensive lineman in the draft, battling for the tackle job with Andre Dilliard, and the loser of that battle moves to the inside and is the left guard. I would not hate that starting 5 at all. I think that that's a quite nice offensive line. Now, if it was up to me, I would probably like to get a starting caliber guard in the draft as well. If they go tackle at 11, I think that having a guy that at the very least, you get a John Michael Schmitz or a Cody Mock, for example, or Steve Avila out of TCU, who I like a lot. One of those guys on day 2, or maybe even a day 3 guy that they fall in love with, to at worst be that swing guy that can develop and maybe be the future if a guy like Dilliard or Brunskill is not a long-term option. I think that's how you go about it. But in terms of just the starting guys and not looking at the depth, I like it a lot. It's starting to come together. I think we're starting to get a vision of this Titans offensive line that was and still is the biggest question mark for them in this offseason. All right, so we got that breaking news out of the way. I'm sure we'll have more thoughts on that as the Daniel Brunskill news matriculates, big word, over the next couple of hours before Friday. But let's move on, JT. Last segment that we're going to do by ourselves. And then I've buried the lead here. We didn't even mention it at the top of the show. But if you clicked on the show and looked at the title, you'd know that we've got a special guest today. It's our guy, Allan Bell from CBS and CBS Sportsline, professional bettor. We found an excuse to have him on. We're talking March Madness. We're talking NFL betting markets. So that's fantastic. And we'll play that interview with him right after we get into Sum It Up. So JT, we're going to try to keep my mouth shut as much as possible here as we go around the league with all of these moves. We've got, 10 or more moves to discuss. You're going to throw me the pitch. You're going to show me the story. We'll let the folks know what's going on around the league. And then you'll toss it to me. I'm going to try to sum up the analysis of this move, of each move, in as few words as I possibly can. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, give me the first one.
Let's start with the tale as old as time here. The Colts are planning to cut quarterback Matt Ryan. Your reaction?
To sum it up, time is a flat circle, okay? Your annual Colts move on from retread quarterback tweet has arrived. We are once again in the flat circle that is time. Colts looking for a quarterback, playing said quarterback leaving after a year of misery and pain and mediocrity. It is the way that the Colts have been for the last 5 years or more. So maybe that cycle ends with the rookie that they draft, but the part of the cycle that won't end is whoever they end up putting at quarterback this year. The narrative will be at some point this summer, the inevitable. Who's stopping this Colts team? Who in the AFC South, if anybody, can contend with this Colts team? Now, maybe the Jaguars are thrown in there. I hope that they are, because they deserve to actually be talked about that way as opposed to the Colts. But yeah, time is a flat circle.
Moving on, we're going to keep talking about the Colts here, who traded 5-time Pro Bowler cornerback Stephon Gilmore to the Cowboys for a 2023 fifth-round compensatory pick. Easton, what do you think the Colts are trying to do here with this deal?
And to sum it up, rebuild or retool? That's the question that comes to mind when I see the Colts wheeling and dealing up there in Indianapolis. They continue to bleed these defensive contributors. They lost Okereke yesterday, Bobby Okereke, one of their starting linebackers, and now they do away with potentially their best cornerback on the roster, legendary player Stephon Gilmore, headed to Dallas. I think that's a nice get from Dallas for a 5th-round pick. Definitely worth it, in my opinion. But I don't know, what is the mindset up there in Indianapolis? Are they rebuilding? Are they retooling this roster that they've had for like 5 years? They've held together and have convinced everybody it's one of the most solid rosters in the league. They just need a quarterback who can contend. It's not actually been one of the most solid rosters in the league for a while now. And so the question is, do they hang on to this vestige of the past, hoping that they can finally get a quarterback to make this version of the roster work? Or do they move on? That's the question.
One final Colts tidbit here. The Colts are signing kicker Matt Gay to a 4-year, $22.5 million deal, which makes it the biggest ever deal for a kicker in free agency and most money over 3 years for a kicker on the deal. Easton, sum up this free agent signing.
To sum it up, reliable kicking pays, okay? Pay for a kicker that you never have to worry about. I have no problems with this move whatsoever. He was a guy, Matt Gay, who from the Rams, the Colts got him. I was hoping the Titans would be interested in him. There's a couple of other veteran kicker options out there. There's also some options in the draft or an undrafted free agent this year. Whoever it may be, you got to go get a kicker that you can rely on. And for Matt Gay, his reliable kicking has paid dividends.
Aaron Rodgers' watch seems to me maybe coming to an end tomorrow, as Pat McAfee tweeted out, "Be a friend, tell a friend. You are cordially invited to his show at 1 p.m. EST tomorrow, where Aaron Rodgers will be live on the show." Easton, sum up this maybe final saga of the Aaron Rodgers watch.
To sum it up, it was always McAfee, right? It was always the Pat McAfee show, where we were going to get the final clarity on Aaron Rodgers' future, whether that is retirement, the Packers, the Jets, or elsewhere. I think this is where we finally get closure on Rodgers. If you know anything about Pat McAfee's show, it is amazing and it is many things, but cordial is not a word that I would describe that show as being. However, we are all cordially invited to attend another Aaron Rodgers Wednesday on the day that you're listening to this. So if you're listening right now, maybe your next listening should be that Aaron Rodgers interview, because it will be an interesting one for sure. The one thing on the Rodgers front, the Rodgers saga, the Rodgers drama, soap opera that we've got going on here that's new as of today is that he's apparently already sent a wish list of personnel to the Jets, a team that he does not play for, nor is he employed by yet. Hilarious that they are even reporting on this. The Jets are even considering it, and based on our next story coming up, they are more than considering it. This wish list is hilarious, okay? So it was reported by Diana Rossini that Aaron Rodgers has provided the New York Jets with a wish list of free agents he would like them to target and acquire per sources. It includes Randall Cobb, Allan Lazard, Mercedes Lewis, and Odell Beckham Jr. So basically all of Rodgers' old and crusty friends that he wants to bring with him. I don't ever want to hear anybody say that Rodgers is a bad teammate, because he likes to get his friends jobs. And then Odell Beckham Jr., which is a guy that I guess he would like to throw to. So very funny, but it was always McAfee where we were going to get that clarity for Rodgers.
The Jets are following through on at least part of that wish list, taking the youngest guy on that wish list here, signing Allan Lazard to a 4-year, $44 million deal. Sum it up.
To sum it up, whipped. The Jets are whipped, man. They're so whipped. They are in over their heads with the Aaron Rodgers situation. They're in too deep. And so, I mean, can you blame them? They feel like they're so deep in the hole they can't climb out. Might as well just keep digging down, man. And so that they are. That's what they're doing. Allan Lazard, not a great receiver, in my opinion. I think that he is very overrated and they are spending way too much money on him. But if it's what gets them Rodgers, what are they meant to do? They're already doing the bidding of Rodgers, which is a tough look, man. But what are you meant to do? They've got to get Rodgers. They've already built in this expectation for themselves and for their fans that Rodgers is going to be their guy and that they're going to move on from Zach Wilson. But this is all a punishment, a karmic punishment to the Jets front office for having fallen for Zach Wilson in the first place. My only request is this. Please, Aaron, please, I'm begging you for the content. Convince them to sign all these players and then retire. Please make the Jets spend all this money on all of your old friends just for them not to get you in the end. It will be hilarious. It will be the biggest cuckold you've ever seen. And I want to see it happen. So just for the content, for the laughs, please, Aaron, convince them to sign your friends and then retire because you have the Jets whipped.
The Saints made a couple of moves today, but the most important one is they're retaining their star, quotation mark, wide receiver Michael Thomas on a incentive-laden deal, 1-year deal, to keep him in New Orleans for the 2023 season. I believe it's a $10 million deal, but most of that
deal. Michael Thomas is going to play until he's 39 for the New Orleans Saints.
I mean, we did say it's an incentive-laden deal, so
sure.
Maybe he won't even play. He won't get any of that money. Easton, your thoughts on this signing?
Yeah, to sum it up, will Slant Boy ever return to relevance? Is there a bigger superstar in the league that has been completely irrelevant longer than Michael Thomas right now? And this guy, does it feel like he's played even a single meaningful snap in 2 years? I don't think that he really has.
He had 2 good fantasy games last season at the beginning of the season.
And I know because he was on my team. So yes. But I just don't know. His injury issues have become a concern. They've become a pattern. His attitude is a question mark at best. I just don't know. I mean, I get them wanting to keep him for Derek Carr to have hypothetically an elite weapon available to him. But I just don't know how much he's got left at this point. It's been a long time since we've seen meaningful football, elite football from Michael Thomas. So will he ever return to relevance? That's my question.
The Eagles have agreed to terms with Seahawks running back Rashad Penny on a 1-year, $2 million deal with 1.35 of that being the base. A couple other guarantees in there to go or incentives to go up to $2 million. And they also signed Boston Scott, running it back, the Giant Killer, on a 1-year, $2 million deal. Easton, what are your thoughts on these running back signings for the Eagles?
Well, I don't have any thoughts on the Giant Killer besides you got to keep the Giant Killer because you play the Giants twice a year. That's smart. That's smart football business. In terms of summing up the signing of Rashad Penny away from Seattle, to sum it up, I'd say this: works great until it doesn't. Okay. Is there a bigger injury risk in the entire league right now than Rashad Penny? I don't know that there is. I don't understand why you would want to roll the dice on him because you just know he's not going to make it through the season. And that's frustrating. I understand, because when he's healthy, he's a very, very, very talented running back. He's very good. And that's obviously the reason why the Eagles got him. But I just don't know how you can have any faith that he's going to be able to play for a full season.
The most exciting trade of the day came from the Giants, who traded to acquire star tight end Darren Waller from the Raiders for a 3rd-round pick. Easton, what are your thoughts on this trade?
My summing up of this trade is, did it for Danny, right? You had to make your new very expensive quarterback look like he was worth the price tag. So Brian Dable, the head coach over there, he's going to be working to find a way to use his new big-bodied receiving tight end to put defenses in a blender, and that's a pretty scary proposition.
The Raiders also moving out on Darren Waller, welcoming in Patriots free agent wide receiver Jacoby Myers to a 3-year deal with $33 million, worth $33 million, with $21 million guaranteed. Another New England to Vegas connection here for both the quarterback and the coach. What are your thoughts on this signing?
Yeah, to sum this one up, I said bargain familiarity. Okay, this guy obviously has McDaniels ties from his New England days. They need some receivers down there to catch balls from Jimmy Garoppolo, so they've got another weapon for him. I really like Jacoby Myers. I think that it's a pretty good bargain deal that they signed him to, $33 million with just $21 million guaranteed for 3 years. I like that a lot. I think other teams should have been interested. I thought the Titans should have been interested. Maybe not that number necessarily, but I think he's a good receiver and he's going to help out Jimmy Garoppolo a lot.
The Bucs were also on the trade market today, trading veteran guard Shaq Mason to the Texans, a late-round pick swap, a 6th-rounder for a 7th-rounder. Your thoughts on that trade?
I'd sum this one up with this. Somebody should have beat it. That's how I sum it up. I think that the Titans are one of a handful of teams in the league that absolutely should have done this trade, and it's an absolute steal, in my opinion, for an in-division rival. The Texans getting Shaq Mason, a veteran lineman, to help bolster that line, to protect whoever they end up drafting at quarterback this year. I like it a lot, and somebody should have beat it.
Finally here, Caleb McGarry, star lineman, is signing back with the Falcons on a 3-year, $34.5 million deal. Another lineman that Falcons re-up and lock out of the free agent market. Your thoughts on this signing?
Yeah, I summed this one up with this: death by Dillard and draft. Okay. The Titans were a team early on rumored to, maybe not rumored to be, but expected to be interested in a guy like Caleb McGarry, right tackle, very, very good star lineman, like you said, down there in Atlanta. But this is a big chess piece in the offensive line free agent market that is returning to Atlanta. And I didn't really expect the Titans to have much interest here after the start to free agency that they've had. I just don't think that it would have made a lot of sense for them to drop a ton of money into him at right tackle when the right side of the line, as we've already established, seems to be in relatively decent shape so far and not the biggest need for them. If any big splash signing comes, I'd expect it to be more on the left side. So for that reason, I think death by Dillard and draft is what you can make of the Titans' interest in Caleb McGarry. And that's it. Is that right? Is that we got?
Yep.
All we got? All right. So that was Sum It Up. I liked that one. That one's fun. It makes me really boiled down my thoughts into bite-sized pieces and not make everybody listen to me ramble for 3 hours. So we're going to get to our last segment here and then get out of here. It's the best part of the show. If you stuck around this far, you're in for a treat. We've got our guy, Allan Bell from CBS Sportsline. Let's go ahead and get to that interview. All right, let's welcome in for the second time ever, my favorite guest we've ever had on this show, Allan Bell of CBS Sportsline. He is a professional bettor, and he is joining us once again. Allan, welcome back to the show. I'm so glad we have an excuse to have you on. Always looking for an excuse to have you on. How are you doing, man?
Man, I'm fantastic. Hey, and I appreciate you guys having me back for sure, man. We had a blast last time. Let's run it back.
Yeah, I mean, we had to have you back at the very least to let you go on a little bit of a victory lap. And maybe we all go on a victory lap because we had you on, for those that maybe have just joined us, we had you on our last show before the Super Bowl. And we did the best bet gauntlet with you. You were the first person we ever did our best bet gauntlet with as a guest. And how dare you come on to our show and drop the first 5-0 betting week that we've ever had on the show in the Super Bowl, which is supposed to be impossible to bet. What, how, what are you doing here?
Dude, we had a good night, but I'll say, like, I say that and I emphasize we, like, all of us. What do we go? Like 10-1?
We went 10-1 on the night. Yeah, it was ridiculous. It was awesome. The best way to end the year ever. It was amazing.
It really was, dude. Yeah, I had a blast doing it. Like, obviously, like, cashed on you guys' picks, all of ours together. It was fantastic.
It was awesome. So we had to have you back. And today we're going to talk about two things. All right. We want to go through some of the early betting markets for the NFL draft. We're about, what are we, a month away from the draft now? 5 weeks, something like that. It's creeping up on us. And we also are going to do a little bit, and this is a football show, a Titans show, but everybody in the world is filling out their brackets this week. We've got March Madness coming up on Thursday. And so we wanted to get some thoughts from you on that because it's got to be relevant to everybody listening. And if you're not doing a bracket and you don't care about college basketball, you're in the minority, man, because we're all doing it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But we'll start with the NFL draft market. And, it's very early. I think it bears repeating that the odds on first overall pick or first guy taken from this position or that position, they change so much, even in the last 4 or 5 weeks before the draft. So it is really, I saw somebody tweet the other day a screenshot of the odds for the first overall pick from this time last year. And it was not even close to representative of how the top 5 shook out. It was Aiden Hutchinson. It was a heavy favorite, and then he ends up going number 2 to the Lions. So like it can change a ton, but it's still fun to try to see if we could find some value in these markets. So we're going to focus on the three biggest ones for Titans fans, at least: the quarterback market, the wide receiver market, and the offensive line market. With quarterback up first, as of today, on March 14th, Pi Day, I guess it is. We've got CJ Stroud, currently the leader in the clubhouse at minus money, minus 260, followed by Anthony Richardson, made a big leap since the combine, up to second, plus 275. Then Bryce Young, plus 320, and Will Levis carrying the rear, a distant plus 4,500. So, Allan, what do you make of this market right now, and what do we think Carolina is going to do with that first overall pick?
Yeah. So, all right, let me say this. From a betting perspective, CJ Stroud, right?
Okay.
Like I think that's kind of the best way to go because, we saw the trade, obviously, with the Panthers and the Bears here. But let me say
your
this.
opinion on that is based on the fact that the Panthers are there, right? I mean, it is a Panthers specific guess because we know the kind of guy Frank Reich seems to be into.
100%, right? Like, and I mean, you make that trade to obviously get a quarterback. Look, CJ Stroud is the guy because he's a blend of all of it. Like, not necessarily that he's super mobile, not necessarily that he's, Peyton Manning, right? But he's kind of a blend in all that. And I think that there's risk, with a guy like Anthony Richardson. There's risk with any of them, but
all of these
Will
guys,
Levis,
yeah.
Will Levis, right? The bet that I would make also that I would throw like $5 on would be Bryce Young. Now, I don't necessarily think that that's going to happen, but like you said, things change a lot, and it's not going to be the team. It's just going to be the thought process and everything that we hear. And I mean, Bryce Young is amazing, but yeah, I mean, long story short, Stroud. That's who you bet on.
Yeah, and I mean, a single day can change these things. I'd imagine when we get Bryce Young's pro day, because we've not seen him do any athletic testing from the combine. He just weighed in and said peace and dipped out of town.
Yeah.
And so now he's, shedding all of that, all those PBJs he was putting down to get that fake number on the board. And now he's going to, I'm sure, not weigh in at his pro day and wow everybody with his athleticism. And then the market will change. So I don't doubt at all that that's the case. But it is an interesting dynamic here because we do already have reports that David Tepper, the owner of the Panthers, he seems to be in on Bryce Young, whereas Frank Reich, at least based on his history, Bryce isn't really the kind of guy he's chosen in a quarterback. He's just not, the size profile doesn't match. So it may be an interesting thing where those two go to battle. And ultimately, I mean, my money's on the owner to get his way, but you never know. Do you think the one thing that I'm curious about and may totally turn this market on its head, we heard almost immediately after the Panthers went up there that, hey, we're not opposed to moving back down for another team that wants to come up to 1.1. They may be, or at least they're projecting the idea that we went up here because we want a quarterback, but ultimately we want to be able to control the board. Do you think that's something they are actually considering doing?
I mean, anything's possible, but no, like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, you don't
Yeah.
make that trade to try to pull something off. Like, you're doing too much. You know what I mean? And like, look, like the NFL is about having a quarterback. That's where it begins and ends. There are 20 people on planet Earth who can do this job properly. That's it.
Yep.
That's it. You've got to find it. So no, like, I mean, anything could happen if somebody goes crazy and offers something nuts, for sure. I don't really think it's going to happen. Like, you go get your QB. So no, I wouldn't go with that.
Yeah, I'm with you entirely. Let's look at the wide receiver market here. This has changed quite a bit as well. And the combine is the common thread here. Things seemed to turn pretty significantly in all of these markets around that combine and guys performing well, performing poorly. We ended up with Jackson Smith and Jigba at Ohio State becoming the odds-on favorite to be the first wide receiver off the board. The only guy with a minus next to his name, minus 150 for him to be the first wide receiver taken. Then Quentin Johnson out of TCU at plus 350. Jordan Addison from USC plus 600. Zay Flowers at plus 800. And the hometown kid, Jalen Hyatt from the University of Tennessee, coming up at plus 950. Is there any value to be had here? Do you think that it is JSN with a bullet at the top, or do you think that there could be a shakeup here?
There could be. Again, I'm giving you answers that have like, a backing out of, sort of say, but no, like I think it's Jackson, right? Like, I think that's the guy. And, the interesting part is that in this draft, it's not necessarily wide receiver heavy, right? Like, it's not going to be
at all. No.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, this is a very blue collar type draft. Like, you're getting offensive linemen.
That's a very political way of saying a very, very bad skill player draft.
100%. Right. Now, the interesting part is that, and you guys have hit on this better than anyone, the NFL is always evolving. Right. And while this first round is not going to be wide receiver heavy, it is tight end / athletic tight end heavy.
It is.
Right? Like, and there's kind of that blueprint now to having an athletic tight end that is essentially a wide receiver of what you're using. I mean, the Chiefs do it with Kelsey They've done it forever. He's essentially their number one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that, any of these guys can be Travis Kelce, but like just the prototype there. But yeah, man, like I think it's Jackson. And Ohio State might run this for a little while. Like whenever Harrison comes out, like that dude's an NFL.
You already
guy
know
right
he's the
now.
first guy off the board. He's got to be next year. Yeah,
He
he's a
might
top
be the
5
first
guy
overall
for sure.
pick. Like
He might.
he's that good. But no, like I mean, I think Jackson's the guy. Like if you were gonna bet, and even though minus 150 is juiced up, Jackson's the dude for sure. Like this is the one you don't overthink it. Like just if you could get him, get him.
Yep, agreed. Last one here, offensive line market, maybe the most pertinent to Titans fans. We've got 2 guys that are neck and neck here. Nobody at minus odds. Peter Skoronski at plus 125 is the slight favorite over Paris Johnson Jr. at plus 140. Then you got Broderick Jones at plus 400 and a distant fourth, Darnell Wright at plus 750. Between Skoronski and Johnson, who do you think ends up going first? And do you think, to tie this into Nashville, where we're all from here, do you think the Titans are still considering offensive tackle their number one need at 11 after the move for Andre Dilliard this week?
So, okay, first, I think Skoronski is the guy, even though John, like, it could be 1A, 1B, right?
Yeah.
But I think Skoronski is that guy. I think that he'll be the first O-lineman taken. And I'll say this. You're right about Dillard, right? But from a Titans perspective, there's been so many, conversations about John Robinson and the job that he did. And it's kind of difficult to judge because he gets fired for not meeting the level that he created.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like he had some bad losses, but the dude had some hits as well. And where the Titans got off stray was the offensive line. Like when they stopped drafting offensive linemen, that's when things kind of went to hell, right? So, yeah.
How about Pep drafting bad offensive linemen?
Yeah. Well, when you have a guy that doesn't play.
The few picks you do make with the offensive line just don't work out. Not a great recipe. Yeah.
No, but it was like, when they were going Lawan, Conklin, like, I mean, this offensive line was a beast, and offensive line is one of those positions to where if you have a great offensive line, like you don't have to have like the elite skill players everywhere. Your offensive line will make everyone better. But if you
they'll make non-elite skill players look elite. You will fool team, and that's how. I mean, 9 times out of 10, when you see a guy get signed in free agency to a team, and they just look. I mean, Corey Davis is maybe the most homegrown example of a guy who. It was A.J. Brown, as well as the fact that year was the last year the Titans actually had time to throw the ball deep because they had an offensive line that could pass protect. All of those things made him look so good. They go and the Jets go and spend a ton of money on him and to pan out in the same way. Like that is absolutely the recipe. It is the number one thing. Yes,
100%. Like your quarterback and your offensive line spend almost all of your money making sure that you're good there, because if you're good there, you don't have to have all pros everywhere else. Like you could take your risk in the draft. Those two positions will take care of a lot of things. And look, I mean, people are like, "Hey, Ryan Tannehill, he stinks. He needs things." Dude, welcome to the NFL. Like, yes, your quarterback needs an offensive line. Like he does. I don't care who you have.
Did everybody see Patrick Mahomes against the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl, running 100%. For his life, and even he, the superhero of all superheroes in the league, couldn't overcome that offensive line.
Yep. So I agree. Like, take care, make sure you have a quarterback and offensive line. All right. So all that being said, I think that it is. Now with the Titans, they need so much that it depends on the position, depends on if there are any type of runs before, because you've got options, right? Like you've got other positions, but I would think that you need key pieces here. Like you don't go get a damn corner, right? Like there are 1,000 cornerbacks.
Very deep cornerback draft. Very deep.
It is. But there are 1,000 of them. Don't get a wide receiver. Like you need offensive line, and they're taking care of their defense. Go get offensive line. So long story short, you got to do it. Like you just have to do it.
Yeah. I think, my last thought on this is that I still think offensive line is the number one priority for them, but I thought that the Dillard trade maybe makes them looking to move back even more likely, because they don't necessarily need You know what I mean? In this draft, I think moving back is a very appetizing option if they could find a trade partner.
So I'm glad that you said that, because I think you're 100% right. And doing that, if you can, and you can add, let's say 2 to 3 additional draft picks.
Yep.
Use those on offensive line.
Yes, go do it. Yes, yep.
Go do it. Get as many as you can.
Get a Cody Mock, get a John Michael Schmitz, get a Osiris Torrance, get a, like these guys. It's actually a pretty deep line draft as well. Yeah. There are options to be had.
Absolutely. Like, get as many as you can. And yes, it won't be attractive and people will complain about it, but they won't complain about it when you have a good offensive line. Like, I 100% agree with that. There are so many other positions that you can take risks on if your O-line is good. So, yeah, I think your plan is spot on.
All right, we're done with football here. Before you go, we could not have you on the show today without talking a little bit of March Madness. So, first of all, I want and I know that you, as a professional bettor, you've got to have the lowdown on the college football scene, much better than JT and I. I'm the kind of guy, this is the crash course week for me. You know what I mean? It's like when the World Cup comes around, everybody becomes a soccer expert. March Madness comes around. This is the week where I become a college basketball expert. From nothing to something, and pretend I know what I'm talking about. You actually do know what you're talking about on these things. First of all, your 10,000-foot view of this field this year. I feel like, from what I've heard, it is a field primed for some particular madness, just because there's a lot of great, there's a lot of good, but not great. Is that an accurate assessment?
100%. Like, I really think that there's so much parity out there. Look at the season. Right? Like, I mean, how many number ones lost throughout? Like, when did we ever see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So it's like, there are a ton. Now, that being said, though, like, anybody betting on the NCAA tournament, let me just say this right now.
Okay.
It is the most difficult thing to do. Like, think about this. 80% of 100 million brackets will be busted by Sunday, Monday. Okay. And that's just picking winners.
And that's money line picks. That's not even the handicap stuff.
Line.
Yeah.
So now you're picking spreads. So understand,
good
it's difficult.
Yep.
If you start off, say, Thursday, and it's a tough morning, like, I'm not saying go, like, throw your money at it. What I'm saying is, don't get down on yourself. Like, all of us are in the same boat together. It's hard. Now, there are some notes and nuggets about betting seeds and things like this. All right, so
I just have to point out before you go into it, Allan, I'm having a hard time believing you, because in my head I know that you're right, but in my heart all I see is deja vu to us having this exact same conversation, prepping people for Super Bowl bets, and then you didn't miss. So I'm just saying, in terms of very difficult events to bet, we like your track record on these things. All right, no, you continue.
I appreciate it. Yeah. So, right now, like, the opening weekend, like, bet teams that are playing good basketball. Like, it sounds dumb, but it's
hot hand.
Like,
yep.
Yeah, don't overthink it. Like, Arizona is playing excellent basketball right now. Memphis is playing excellent basketball right now.
How about a team like Texas?
Yeah, absolutely. Penn State is playing good basketball. Purdue, right? So don't be afraid. Like, if you look up and you're like, all my bets are like favorites, it's okay. Like, if you're betting, those teams generally come in and play well. Now, like, betting throughout the tournament, 5 years in a row, a 1 seed has won the national championship. This is, for as much madness as the tournament is, it's the most chalk event of all time.
I hate that. It's so boring.
It is. Like, no one above a 4 seed, I think one has won since 79. Right.
Like, the real madness is the first and second weekend and maybe the third, but that, you know what I mean? Like, that's the fun of it. So, yeah.
1 seeds, they've won 5 in a row. However, the number 1 overall seed has not won a title since Louisville in 2013.
And that's Alabama this year, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So can you bet on that? It's not really, like, those teams have nothing to do with these teams.
Sure.
But it is a thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is a thing. Now,
trend's a trend.
11 seeds, 6 seeds, 11 seeds have actually a winning record. Right.
Bizarre.
Yeah. Like, that goes to show, man, like, it's so tight, and you'll see, like, don't look at just numbers of a seed, dude, because it gets tight. But, like, I'll stop there and just say, teams that are playing good basketball tend to continue. Duke, like, teams that are shooting well. And here's the other one. When you're doing your research, find teams that have a good, points per possession and defensive points per possession. They don't have to be the best, but teams that are just generally even and good at that, those teams are tough to beat. What you don't want are teams that are wildly erratic because, like Tennessee Vols, like the offense. You don't know what you're going to get. Now, I like them 10.5 in their first game against Louisiana. But that being said, be careful because you don't
a lot of points for a team whose offense sometimes just does not show up. Yeah.
So just that, like, that's your best note. Find those two statistics and take a look. Teams that are just solidly good and consistent, that generally it generally continues.
All right, 2 more very short questions, and then we'll let you go.
And I'll keep it shorter. I'm yapping here.
Yeah, no. We're happy to let you yap for 10 hours. I'm trying to protect your time here. I need to know who is, for your money, the best team in the field, and who is your sleeper, or maybe a couple of sleeper picks that you really like to make a run in this bracket.
Man, okay. So the best team, I think, is probably Alabama, but what do you do with all this stuff around it? Even though
there's so much noise, noise.
But here's the thing, though. Like, as we've noticed, like, the more noise, they actually play better.
I know.
Right? Like, that's this. Like, I have no idea.
It's really frustrating because they're the villain of this tournament. No one wants them to win.
Yeah,
but they're so good.
And it's like the team of destiny for all the wrong reasons. However, like, there's a lot of kids that had nothing to do with that. So it's like, I don't want to blame them. Sure. Like, they just play good basketball, right? I think they're probably the best team. That being said, Houston and Arizona are problems because they can just mismatch you the same way Alabama can just shoot you to death. And again, I don't mean to say that, like, I'm not saying it as a joke. Like, they can shoot you out of the building because they're just that good.
Yep.
Houston is so big that if you're not ready for that, like, they could dominate the paint and run fast or play slow and just choke you out. Arizona can get down too. Kansas with Bill Self, it scares me. Like, be careful with that. Teams that could make some noise. Duke, obviously, even though that sounds dumb, but they're what, a 6 seed, 5 seed, whatever. Duke is really good. Texas is really good.
I really like Texas. Yep.
Yeah. Like, think of everything that they've gone through. They've lost their coach in the middle of the year and kept going.
I think it's the best story in this tournament from one of at least the higher seeds. I mean, the fact that this is
like, they had nothing to do with this. Yeah, like, that's not on them. You know what I mean? And, like, they just said, okay, like, we'll keep going.
They've rallied. It's amazing.
Yeah. So let me also say, I'm going to stop there.
Okay.
On teams that could go, because honestly, I think this is a year where there are probably 5 teams that could actually win the national championship. Like, I do not believe in a Cinderella this year. I really think, like, once we get to, like, the Elite 8, it's going to be ungodly chalk. I think across the board. So we
may see 2 straight weekends of pure chaos, and then a hard heel turn into the big boys laying down the law.
Bingo. Yeah, you know what? You nailed it. It might be chaos this weekend, and then next weekend, like with Sweet 16, he'll turn straight into everyone that you think is, 1 seeds. Like, those are your guys. So, yeah.
Guys, it's Allan Bell. He's the best. We love having him on. I'm going to be looking I'm going to be turning every stone as we go through this offseason, looking for more reasons to have him on because he is the best at what he does. Check him out. CBS Sportsline. Anywhere else people can find you besides CBS Sportsline?
Yeah, I mean, CBSSports.com, CBS Sports HQ, all of that. But yeah, like, you nailed it right there. Sportsline.com. Yeah, that's the spot.
Dude, you're the best. We love having you on. Thank you so much for your time. We'll have you back soon. Yeah.
Appreciate it, boys. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much for listening today. We're all done here. But before you go, a couple of things you need to know. First of all, check out yesterday's show if you haven't already. We had a little bit of an issue getting it up on podcast platforms, but it is now out there and available. And it's a really good one. We went live on Monday reacting to a lot of the Titans news. The episode is called Andre Dilliard is a Titan. Nate Davis and David Long Jr. are not. And free agency moves from around the league. We cover a bunch of awesome stuff in there and got some awesome questions from viewers. So go and check that out. Listen to that one next. You just keep the podcast feed rolling because it's the next one up after this one. Speaking of the podcast feed, if you are listening to the show but not already subscribed, what are you doing? Please go and subscribe to the show wherever you get your good podcasts, or go to Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. you'll find this show in video form each and every time we put out a show. We put out the video form on YouTube, and it's great. It's beautiful. You can see our beautiful faces, see all the graphics that we put together for the show. It's really a complete product as a video as well as the audio. So go and check it out there. Also, you got to become a Broadway Insider. Okay, I haven't pushed this one in a while, but you can get a subscription to BroadwaySportsMedia.com that is absolutely worth every penny. It would have allowed you to get access to a handful of really awesome free agency articles we had go up on the site last week. And then later this week, we've got an exclusive interview with Titans linebacker Luke Gifford from our guy Justin Mello, our Canadian resident insider, friendly with all the agents, gets these exclusive interviews all the time for us. He's awesome, and he's got an interview with the new linebacker Luke Gifford coming out this Thursday morning over at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. That is just one of a number of reasons why you should become a Broadway Insider today. Just the price of a cup of coffee or a cocktail a month will not break the bank. You can go ahead and get a yearly subscription and save even more that way. So go over to BroadwaySportsMedia.com right now, click on more, find the Broadway Insider tab, and sign up today for all of our content. Last thing, just to let you know, the next show up on this feed, unless the Titans universe falls apart in the next 36 hours, and we're forced to do an emergency show before then on Wednesday evening or Thursday at any point, we will be back on this feed with an episode waiting for you when you wake up on Friday morning as usual. So until then, I'm your host, Easton Freeze. For producer JT, this has been the Hot Read Podcast. We'll talk to you on Friday.